Hi everybody, this is Jessie inchauspé, also known as Glucose Goddess online. I am the author of Glucose Revolution. So let's talk about glucose. I'm going to explain what it is, why it matters for all of us, and then I will give you my top tips to keep your glucose level steady. So first of all, what is glucose? So glucose is your body's favorite source of energy. And every single part of your body, from your fingers to your brain, to your heart, to your liver, is burning glucose constantly, every second of every day, to keep you alive and to perform all the functions that the incredible different parts of your body need to perform. And the way that we give glucose to our body as human beings is by eating foods, and by eating specifically two types of food. The first type is starches. So that's rice, noodles, bread, potatoes, oats, and sugars. So anything that tastes sweet, from a piece of fruit to a cake. So when we eat these starches and sugars, we give glucose to our body. And you might think, okay, well, if glucose is my body's favorite energy and I want to have a lot of energy, then I should just eat as much glucose as possible all the time, right? It turns out that's not really the case. It's a little bit like if you have a plant in your house, you know that the plant needs some water to live, but if you give the plant too much water, then it dies. The human body is the same. Some glucose, fantastic. Too much glucose and problems start happening. And today the issue is most of us are giving too much glucose to our body. And this can lead to so many different types of symptoms, whether it's cravings for sweet foods, whether it's chronic fatigue, whether it's brain fog, hormonal problems, and then long-term, too much glucose in your body is linked to the development of conditions like type 2 diabetes. So it's important for our health, physical, mental, short-term and long-term. It's really important for us to learn how to keep our glucose levels low and steady. What we want to avoid is what is called glucose spikes. So a glucose spike is what you experience if right after a meal and you've eaten too many starches and sugars, too many carbs. It's what your body experiences. It is a rapid increase in the amount of glucose in your system, and then a rapid drop. So when you have too much starch or sugar during a meal, you're going to get this spike in your body. And this spike has consequences. It has consequences like inflammation, like accelerating aging, like getting you closer and closer to type 2 diabetes, like increasing cravings when you have the crash. And glucose spikes, the estimates say that about 80% of us experience glucose spikes on a daily basis, even if we don't have diabetes. Now that's a very important concept. Glucose levels and blood sugar, which is another name for glucose, the management of our glucose levels is not just important for people with diabetes. Now, of course, if you do have diabetes or pre-diabetes, learning how to avoid the glucose spikes is going to help you put those conditions into remission. But even if you don't have diabetes or pre-diabetes, learning to manage the spikes will do two things. First of all, it will help you prevent type 2 diabetes, which is a condition that is becoming so common in the world. Today, there are 1 billion people in the world who have type 2 diabetes or prediabetes, and that number increases every day. So by learning how to manage your glucose levels, you're going to be able to prevent those conditions. And second, managing your glucose levels is going to help you feel so much better today. Energy, cravings, mental health, how you feel in your skin, how much inflammation is going on, how you sleep, your hormones, your fertility, etc. So truly, managing our glucose levels is the foundation of good health. Now, you might be wondering, okay, Jessie, I get it. I want to manage my glucose spikes, but how do I do it? Well, very good question. I asked myself the same question when I realized that glucose spikes were impacting my mental health, and that's how I got into it. But I thought, hey, I don't want to give up all the starches and sugars that I love. I still want to be able to eat the pasta and the rice and the chocolate that I enjoy. So how can I do this with less impact on my glucose levels? And I'm a scientist, I'm a biochemist, and I looked at all the research studies that I could find on this topic. And I identified in the research studies some amazing principles that I call actually hacks in English. And these hacks allow you to eat all the things that you love with less impact on your glucose spikes. So I'm going to share with you my 4 most important, powerful hacks to help you steady your glucose levels and feel amazing. The first most important hack is have a savory breakfast in the morning, not a sweet one. So that means eating salty foods in the morning, like eggs and meat and fish and rice and cheese, etc. Not cereal, fruit juices, pastries. Because if you have a sweet breakfast, that's a big glucose spike in the morning and then a crash and then a roller coaster of glucose levels through the whole day. So you really want to avoid this. Instead, you want to build a savory breakfast that's around protein, that's going to keep your glucose levels nice and steady. And in my books, I have lots of examples and recipes of these. Second hack is all about vinegar. Now, vinegar is a wonderful, powerful substance. And scientists have discovered that if we have 1 tablespoon of vinegar in a big glass of water before we eat a meal that contains carbs, we can reduce the glucose spike of that meal by up to 30%. You might ask yourself, why? How does that work? Well, it's because vinegar contains a molecule called acetic acid. And acetic acid slows down how quickly starches and carbs get broken down into glucose in your digestive system. And so as a result, you can still eat the food you love with less impact on your glucose levels. And any type of vinegar works. White vinegar, cherry vinegar, rice vinegar, any type you want. So 1 tablespoon in a big glass of water once a day before the meal of your day highest in carbs and sugars. That's the second hack. Third hack has to do with vegetables. And this hack, I recommend that you have at the beginning of your meals, when it's easy, you don't have to do this all the time, a starter, essentially a plate of vegetables at the beginning of your meals. They can be raw, they can be cooked, they can be boiled, they can be sautéed, any type of vegetables. Why? Because vegetables contain a substance called fiber. And when we have fiber at the beginning of a meal, she has time to go to your upper intestine and create a sort of protective mesh. So she deploys herself onto the walls of your intestine, creating a protective mesh. And that mesh prevents too many glucose molecules coming down from the rest of the meal from arriving into your bloodstream too quickly. So you can still eat the meal you love, but by adding this veggie starter, you're reducing the impact on your glucose levels. And fourth and final hack I will share. By the way, in my book there are 10 hacks, but this is the fourth one I'll share in this. The fourth and final hack I will share is move after eating. So you know how I explained that every cell in your body uses glucose for energy? Well, that's the case for your muscles as well. The more a muscle contracts, the more it needs glucose for energy. And we can use this to our advantage. Here's the hack. After eating, when it's easy, use your muscles for 10 minutes. You can go for a walk. You can clean your apartment. You can do the dishes. You can do laundry. You can dance in your living room. You can go up and down stairs at work. Whatever way that you find to move your body is going to allow your muscles to soak up and use some of the glucose from the meal you just ate instead of letting the glucose float around and create a big glucose spike. So that hack is moving after eating, and I recommend you do it within 90 minutes after the end of a meal, and you'll get a big difference, especially on cravings and energy. So in conclusion, my 4 most important hacks: savory breakfast, vinegar, veggie starter, and movement. And I recommend you do these whenever it's easy, whenever they call you. But I bet that once you adopt them, they'll be your friends for life. And of course, if you want more science and more hacks, have a look at my book, Glucose Revolution. Thank you so much. Big kiss.